starting with paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. Before we go into the topic, I would like to discuss the alternative pathway. This alternative pathway is of the complement system. Here what happens is factor C3 will hydrolyze with water and become factor 3CB. Along with factor B, it will undergo a reaction which requires factor D, which break down BA and BB. This BB part is required for C3B to become C3 convertase. Now this C3 convertase will become a part of C3 dividing or processing into 3CA and 3CB. C3 convertase and C3B together will help C3-5 convertase be built, which will break down C5 into C5A and C5B, which along with C5, C6, 7, 8 and 9 together becomes a pathway. This will initiate the membrane attack complex to be formed. This MAC forms a pore in the cell membrane of the bacteria, which disrupts the ionic environment of the bacteria, and that's how the bacteria dies. So the alternative pathway is important, and this alternative pathway is against bacterial endotoxins. Okay, so you need to know there are some normal bacteria within the body that is required. So this complement system normally attacks non-self bacteria which are foreign to the body, not the bacteria. These are the self bacteria in the body. So these are healthy bacteria that are present in the body, which is present in the respiratory tract, in the skin, in the gastrointestinal system, in the genital tracts. Okay, so the complement system will attack the non-self, not the self. Okay, so the complement is able to distinguish between the self and non-self bacteria because of complement regulatory protein. What are the complement regulatory protein? They are your CD55 and CD59. CD55 is also known as a DAF protein, that is decay accelerating factor. CD59 is known as MIRL protein, membrane inhibitor of reactive lysis. So we need to know why paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria occurs. Okay, so before that we need to understand this normal physiology of our body. See, myeloid stem cell gives rise to RBCs, neutrophils and platelets. Okay, there is something called the PGI gene code, which will, so you have a PGI gene code. Okay, this PGI gene code codes for GPI, that is glycosyl phosphatidyl inositol. Okay, which is an anchor protein. What do you mean by anchor protein? This will help some other things to get attached to the surface. Okay, so here GPI helps anchor CD55 and CD59. Okay, so when CD55 anchors to GPI, what happens? It prevents C3 convertase formation. So when this reaction occurs, when CD5 comes and attaches to surface of the RBC or neutrophils or platelets, C3 convertase formation does not happen. So what will happen? If C3 convertase does not happen, this reaction will not take place. So CD will not divide into C3A, C3B, and that will not become a part of C5 convertase. Okay? And when GPI helps anchor CD59 to the surface of RBC, neutrophils and platelets, blocks binding of C9, so no MAC is there. Okay, C9 and no MAC is there. So what happens is, now once CD55 comes, the C9 will not be there. If C9 is not there, what will happen? MAC will not be formed. So no pore formation in the bacteria will take place. Okay. Now coming to the topic, what do you mean by paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria? Paroxysmal means episodic attacks, nocturnal means at night, hemoglobinuria means blood in urine, and this is an acquired chronic hemolytic anemia. Now coming to the pathogenesis, it is due to the defect in the myeloid stem cell. So, what are the myeloid stem cell? They produce the RBCs, neutrophils and platelets. Here what happens is there is a mutation in the PIGA gene which is present in the short arm of the X chromosome position at 22.2. This mutation occurs after birth, hence acquired. The PIGA gene encodes for an enzyme that synthesizes membrane-associated protein that regulates the complement. So what happens? This will code for an enzyme. This enzyme is your GPI, glycosyl phosphatidylinositol. This enzyme, what it does is, it acts as a membrane-associated protein. Okay? So when there is no GPI, no complement regulatory protein, CD55 or CD59 is present. So complement attacks the RBCs, causing intravascular hemolysis. So what happens is, now the body does not know how to differentiate between the self and non-self. So no PGI, no GPI will be there. C3 convertase will be present. There will be C9. This will lead to MAC formation. Now this MAC formation will form pore in self and non-self. Bacteria which are surrounding the RBCs, these RBCs will now be affected, will lead to intravascular hemolysis. So what happens is, when you don't have the PIGA gene, no PIGA gene, it will not code for GPI. If there is no GPI, what happens? CD55 will not anchor to the RBCs, neutrophils and platelets. And then what happens? All the bacteria that enters the red blood cells will proliferate, and this will lead to hemolysis. Okay, so normally what happens is, this is what happens to the body, and this is how it protects the body. How it protects the body is, coming back to this point, the complement system normally attacks non-self bacteria. Okay, so when you have normal bacteria in the body, normal healthy bacteria, so this happens. Because of this, GPI is anchoring, the alternative pathway is not getting activated. That is why the self bacteria is safe. Okay, because the alternative pathway is not getting activated. Now if the PGI is not there and then GPI is not there, then what will happen? The alternative pathway will get activated, because this prevents C3 convertase formation. This prevents binding of C9. So MAC will form. So now what happens is, when you don't have PGI, you don't have GPI, what will happen? This prevention of C3 convertase will not occur. Okay, the blockage of C9 will not occur. So what will happen? The alternative pathway will now occur. So what happened? You have the C3 convertase, you have the C9. If you have all these things, what will happen? Your MAC formation will happen. Okay. So as no PGA gene is there, so no GPA gene is there. So what happens is this. So the body's self antigen and non-self antigen can undergo this thing, because now it does not know to differentiate between self and non-self antigens. So what happens is, the alternative pathway gets activated, which can lead to hemolysis. Okay. Now, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria is an intrinsic intravascular acquired hemolytic anemia. It's an intrinsic means within the body, intravascular within the vessels, acquired means after birth, and a type of hemolytic anemia. Hemolysis happens throughout the day and night, but in the night the concentration of urine increases when the patient is in bed sleeping. Okay, when you go to bed, you don't frequently urinate. You sleep throughout. In the morning you empty your blood. So what happens is, in that concentrated urine, the blood also gets concentrated, hence the hemoglobinuria occurs. So clinical features. In clinical features, what do we see? We see a triad. Okay, you have hemolytic anemia, you have pancytopenia and venous thrombosis. Okay, so hemolytic anemia, you will have splenomegaly. Pancytopenia means it affects 3 major cell lines. So here your neutrophils are affected, platelets are affected, your RBCs are affected. So you are susceptible to infections, you will have bleeding, you will have fatigue, and can coexist with aplastic anemia. Okay, so usually patient with aplastic anemia will have some sort of paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. Okay, because your bone marrow is affected. In venous thrombosis, you can have hepatic venous thrombosis, that is Budd-Chiari syndrome. You will have abdomen thrombosis, severe abdomen pain, bowel necrosis. In venous thrombosis, you can have stroke. Dermal thrombosis, you can have skin nodules. Now, clinical features. In clinical features, what other things we can see? There can be pyrexia of unknown origin. There can be some amount of fever, for which we do a lot of investigation. Still, we do not know why fever is occurring. Now, what are the other complications? This can also coexist with iron deficiency anemia and acute myeloid leukemia. Most common cause of death is thrombosis, especially venous. So, hepatic thrombosis in Budd-Chiari syndrome, there can be death. You can have portal vein thrombosis and cerebral thrombosis. Because of these factors, there can be cause of death. And second most cause is infection. So, in Budd-Chiari syndrome, if you see, you can have stenosis, web formation, thrombus. Okay, because of this, what happens, the blood supply to the liver gets hampered. You can have small infarcts which can go through and block minor small vessels. Okay, the same is with stroke. In stroke, what happens, throughout the venous sinuses, if there is a blockage which can lead to stroke, or there can be bleeding into the brain tissue. In portal venous system, you can have blocks in the portal veins. So you see these yellow things, these are blocks. Okay, so which can lead to portal venous thrombosis. Coming to laboratory findings. In laboratory findings, hemoglobin is decreased, hematocrit is decreased, reticulocytosis is increased, MCV is decreased. In iron deficiency anemia, is decreased in iron deficiency anemia and can be increased in reticulocytosis. Lactate dehydrogenase is high. Unconjugated bilirubin is high, haptoglobin is low. Direct Coombs test is negative because there is no antigen-antibody reaction. Here there is no antigen-antibody reaction. Direct injury is there to the self bacteria and non-self bacteria. Okay. Sucrose hemolysis test was previously done, is not reliable anymore. Now we do an acidified serum test, that is the Ham's confirmatory test, which is very reliable. Okay. The gold standard test is flow cytometry test, where CD55 and CD59 are very low. So what happens if they are low? Again, complement system will get initiated. Now, why do we have low haptoglobin and excess lactate dehydrogenase? So what happens is when there is intravascular hemolysis, when you see these red blood cells breaking down, so what happens? Heme and globin part happens. So the heme goes back. Heme stays in the blood vessel. This free hemoglobin can bind with haptoglobin and become a complex. But sometimes there is less haptoglobin. There's so much hemoglobin that haptoglobin falls less. So that time the excess hemoglobin goes to the kidney and causes hemosideruria or hemoglobinuria. Okay. Now because of the breakage of the cell membrane of these RBCs, lactate dehydrogenase will increase. Okay. And what happens is, these RBCs, these RBCs break down and bilirubin is formed. This bilirubin enters the liver as an unconjugated form. And now what happens? This unconjugated form of bilirubin will also increase, leading to cause jaundice. Okay? And all the broken abnormal cells goes to the spleen, and here what happens is you will have splenomegaly. Okay? So, this unconjugated bilirubin will enter the liver, which becomes conjugated bilirubin. But here what happens, there is so much unconjugated bilirubin, the total amount will not enter the liver. I have given you a video of the Ham's test, so you can see the video. The treatment. In treatment, so as we know in the trial, the first was hemolytic anemia. This hemolytic anemia can be associated with iron deficiency anemia, so you can give iron and folate. And RBC transfusion can be done in severe cases. Okay. Now, we know that C3 convertase is there. Because C3 convertase is there, along with C3 convertase and C3b, it will join together to divide C5 into C5a and C5b. So that is why we have to introduce an antibody to this C5, which will prevent its cleavage into C5a and C5b. So coming to the first flow chart. Here what happens is C3 convertase along with C3b will form C5 convertase, which will break down C5a and C5b. Now we give a drug called eculizumab. This eculizumab will be an antibody to C5. So if C5 is an antibody, what will happen? Even if C5 convertase is there, if this is not there, what will it break down? So that is why we give eculizumab, which will block the alternative pathway. Okay. So because of that, what happens? This reaction will not occur. No MAC will be formed. Okay. So the bacteria, the self bacteria will be saved. Precaution: vaccinate against Neisseria meningitidis using eculizumab vaccine. Okay, so you have to vaccinate against Neisseria meningitidis, because what happens is eculizumab is an immunosuppressant, so your immunity will fall down. That is when the patient can have high risk of getting Neisseria meningitidis. So we'll give that vaccine also. So 2 drugs will be given simultaneously. So definite treatment is hematopoietic stem cell transplant. If it coexists with aplastic anemia, bone marrow transplant has to be done. Okay.